Thank you so much, Jeanette, for making the time and talking to me. I've heard that you have quite the story to tell, and I'm very, very eager to get it. What was your journey basically into mermaiding from scuba diving? Just introduce us into your world.
Many years ago, too many that I want to admit, I was going into college and decided to be an English major, but really had no idea what I wanted to do. And as I was figuring that out, my dad said, well, what do you like to do? And the very first thing that popped to mind was scuba diving. And I told him that, and he said, well, do that, as if it was so easy. So I was like, okay. Challenge accepted. So I went off and I became a dive master, and then I became a scuba instructor. And then I worked that job full time for almost 10 years. I did the retail, I did customer service, I serviced gear, I taught courses, I helped out with instructor training. I was involved in all of it. And I loved it so much. And then COVID came. I stopped teaching when everything shut down, and when we were picking things back up again and they asked me to come back, I said, somehow I'm not ready yet. And I couldn't really pinpoint what was going on with me. But every time I thought about, I should go diving, I should get out to the lake, I should plan a trip, it was just kind of like, that's a lot. I'm exhausted of the emotional toll, I guess, of not being scuba dive for so long, kind of put the light out a little bit. And that was very sad for me, because it was like I had to overcome so many hurdles of okay, I have to get all the gear together, I have to get my gear serviced again, I have to spend this money, I have to take this time, I have to, and somehow it just didn't seem worth it, which just broke my heart, because it was a part of me for so long. And then our scuba shop ended up teaching a mermaiding program. And they were just kind of advertising it, and they were just kind of, I was friends with them on Facebook, so I was seeing their posts, and I was like, this would be really fun. Let me try this. And in the meantime, while I was waiting for the class to happen, I watched, of course, the Mer People documentary, and I was like, okay, now I'm just like, this is a non-negotiable. This is a part of my life now. I hadn't even tried on the mermaid fin, and I was like, this is me. And so I took the class, I went all the way through advanced mermaid, and I just have been diving in ever since. It's been absolutely amazing journey into mermaiding.
What's the most favorite and the least favorite that you had in scuba diving, and how does that now compare to mermaiding?
The favorite part for sure that I've always had of teaching anything at all is watching the light go on, right? Watching someone who didn't really get a skill, try it a couple times, you say something, and then all of a sudden they get it and they master it, and it's so beautiful and they're so excited. But unfortunately, along with that part, it comes a lot of physical breakdown, right? You're carrying gear, you're going to the store at 10 in the morning, you're working retail all day, you're getting in the pool at 7 at night and staying until 11 to fill tanks, right? So it was just the days and the physical toll that it takes on you, it just wears you out. And there is a lot of burnout in the scuba industry. So that was one of the considerations definitely with mermaiding, was I only have to carry a few things. Perfect. This is so sad to admit. I have literally worn the transmission out of 2 vehicles because of years of putting hundreds of pounds of scuba equipment in the back of these little cars that should not have been carrying that much weight. And mermaiding seemed so simple in comparison. And the sport itself is not simple, but the gear and the reliance on gear is so much less, which is a very new adventure for mermaiding versus scuba diving.
Yeah. And I think it also highlights exactly one of the big differences, right? It seems like scuba diving is quite technical. There's a lot of the equipment, right? It's a lot of facts that you got to know, and you got to take care of the gear, and it's quite expensive too, I think. And on the mermaiding, it feels more like getting down to the basics and to the connection between you and nature and your emotional connection with that. Would you agree?
Absolutely, because when you're on a dive, you get that connection. you get that moment of peace, that moment of feeling just calm, and the world melts away and you just concentrate on what you're doing. And mermaiding has that same aspect, but with so much less else to concentrate on, because with scuba, you have to be checking your dive computer, you have to be adjusting your buoyancy, you have to be doing all these extra things and worrying about, or being conscious of at least, your gear. But with mermaiding, you just have to be conscious of yourself. And that is such a more, right? But that's such a more interesting experience, to connect with water in that way and have that peaceful moment in a new sense. And it's wild and it's scary in some ways, and I think that's maybe what stops some scuba divers from wanting to try mermaiding, is that they're like, wait, I have to hold my breath when we're so used to having a tank on. So it's just a matter of, people need to realize that mermaiding is amazing and you can do it no matter who you are. I just love it so much.
What would you tell a scuba diver that is exactly afraid of that? Like, I mean, for me, it also actually sounds kind of scary, because I have not done any freediving yet. I'm kind of a mermaid on land. I did like the modeling part, and like now building a mermaid and like helping to connect the community, but I have not mastered the skill of really holding my breath for so long. So what would be your tip to get past that scared part and that physical demand also for mermaiding?
The biggest thing I would encourage people to remember is that everyone starts from their own place, right? I was doing the Patty Mermaid, and our instructor goes, okay, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder when you get to 1 minute breath hold. And I was like, 1 minute? You expect me to start out at 1 minute? Like, I was like so not believing in myself whatsoever. And I didn't make it to a minute my very first try. And I'm totally okay with that, because as we went on, as we learned more, I did make it past that minute mark. And that gave a huge sense of accomplishment. And that's something that I think maybe a scuba diver might enjoy about the mermaiding aspect, is that in scuba diving, a lot of our accomplishments come from, oh, I took a navigation course. Oh, I got to a certain depth I've never been to before, right? There's these little things you can do. But in mermaiding, it's very much like, wow, I conquered, something that I thought was challenging. And you can do it in a much easier way. As you said, a lot less money, a lot less time, a lot less physical endurance. You're practicing that breathing that is, of course, extremely physical, but you can improve your sleep on your couch. You don't have to be in water, whereas with scuba diving, you pretty much have to have the water to get better. So that's just a really cool aspect of mermaiding, I think, is just the idea of personal accomplishment. It rings a little differently when you're mastering yourself, your body, instead of just another fact that you should know to stay safe.
Something that I'm also curious about, I'm sure you've run across that reaction. When you normally talk about mermaiding to a stranger, the reaction is either, excuse me, what? Like mermaiding like Ariel? Or it's like, oh my God, this is so cool that this exists. I'm curious, in scuba diving, would you say that most of the people are more on the fence of like mermaiding that's just for children, or is there this desire and they just don't know about it?
So I think it's just a matter of discovery. I really think that mermaiding is still in its youth, and it really has so much more to grow, and it doesn't have anything to do with necessarily people being scared of it or thinking it's childish. It's really just a matter of, oh, I can do that. And like you said, some people, when they learn about it, they're like, oh, not for me whatsoever. That's okay if you don't want to do it. But if you have any sort of limiting belief, the answer is no, you can totally do this. Like, anyone can be a mermaid. It's amazing.
That's also one of the biggest reasons why I've created Mermap, is to help spread that message and really get it across out there, because I really think it can empower a lot of people to empower themselves and get that personal